Muted.
Everyone, if you can please take about 30 seconds to please share this Facebook live stream to your networks, I would very much appreciate it. I put a sample post into the chat, and our goal tonight is to engage as many people as humanly possible. So we're going to take a 30-second timeout. Again, it's facebook.com/South Orange Village. All your groups, your personal pages, everything you have. Let's rock and roll. Okay, I think we're all set. Mr. Abramson, you ready to rock and roll?
I am, yes.
Okay. Rest of topology, thumbs up. This is a very exciting night.
Sure.
So we're getting started. Happy New Year to all of our South Orange residents. Thank you so much for joining tonight for our introductory workshop. And also, we are going to be going over the land use aspect of the element in our master plan. First and foremost, I want to thank all of you for your patience. This has been a master plan of epic proportion, right? We've never seen anything like this before, certainly not in my lifetime, and I'm not exaggerating in the least bit, is that the last time a comprehensive master plan has been done in the township of South Orange Village was in 1978. And so many aspects of the goals that we see in our master plan, they're just outdated. There are things, there's new people who have come in, there's businesses that have come in. We have so many new advisory committees who help shape the direction of where South Orange wants to move forward in the next 20 and 30 years. And so one of the initiatives we undertook, I would say dating back to 2015, 2016, was what is this document? Have we planned for the advancement of land use, of open space, of mobility? And the answer was absolutely not, right? We kept using re-examination reports to really, quote unquote, shape our shared future, which is the tagline. And so myself, along with the governing body, and I certainly want to recognize them. They are here tonight. Trustee Walter Clark, Trustee Donna Collier, Trustee Karen Hartshorn-Hilton, Trustee Summer Jones, Trustee Steve Schnall, Trustee Bob Zuckerman. We basically said no. The difference between 1978 versus 2021 is quite different. And we want to make sure that we have a plan in place that can withstand the test of time, that reflects the values of our unique village, of the voices. Hopefully each and every one of you received a letter. And we began this process probably about 2 years ago or so. And we were able to enlist, I would say, approximately about 150 or more ambassadors from people who represented chair people from our various advisory committees, boards, commissions, organizations that are in South Orange. That is wildly amazing. And then we tapped into our neighborhood associations. Prior to COVID-19, we were having house parties, I guess you will call it that. Anything associated with the master plan is a house party. We were having visioning sessions at our South Orange Performing Arts Center. We had online surveys going on. We had literally a spot in our downtown where people could stop in and look at maps and some of the things that were being discussed. And we had thousands of people commit themselves to being a part of shaping this shared future. And to each and every one of you, I am so grateful. I am wildly grateful. No plan is good unless you have kind of, I wouldn't say universal, but a lot of buy-in from the stakeholders that you're trying to serve. And between myself, the board of trustees, our planning board, and our planning firm, that was always the goal: is how many people could we have involved with the master plan? One that in well over 40 years would be involved with talking about what these future values are, what the vision is, and these values that we kind of share together. And then COVID hit us earlier this year. I will reiterate, it is a sincere apology from myself, the board of trustees, our staff, our planning firm. Our adoption was going to be earlier this year, but as a result of this global health pandemic, we reallocated our resources to a public health response. And something as exciting as normally our South Orange Master Plan really kind of moved to the back burner, despite a really robust front end effort. We do apologize for the past few months where we weren't able to re-engage with the public, and we just simply redirected those resources. But at least over the past couple months, we were able to pivot. We were able to re-engage with topology and our planning board, and try and refocus this initiative back to where we intended it to be, which was the most impressive amount of residents that we could have engaged, and not just residents, but our stakeholders, our businesses, people who come into our community. We didn't reject any of these comments. So this is the first night of 3 nights in consecutive form. Tonight, which is Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we're going to go over these elements of our master plan, solicit your feedback, and then take a little bit break to incorporate all of your suggestions. And I'm really thrilled about that. The one thing that I want to say is a big nod to Phil and Greer and to Will is that they've moved at our pace. They've understood that after 40 years, you take your time. You take the time to listen to everybody. You take the time to really understand people's passions about South Orange and what this future entails, not just for current residents, but future residents, and what type of future that we are building together. So to our topology team, thank you so much for working with us, for ensuring that every voice that wanted to be heard will be heard, and incorporating all this feedback into this document that is quite a document. So if you're tuning in for the first time, have not participated in any of the visioning sessions or submitted comments online, just know that that's totally fine, right? We're still in the front end, and you can go to somasterplan.com. Again, that's somasterplan.com, where you can see the full draft document. We have first a survey for you to respond back to the general goals. Are we moving in the right direction as a village and as a community? And also we have direct contact information for topology, because by the time this moves to the planning board, and they are the official body that will adopt this document. And again, a note to Harold Colton Max, who is the chairman of our planning board and has been absolutely exceptional, until we get to a stage where we feel like we're at that place where we have universal buy-in, or the majority of buy-in, is that we're going to take our time and make sure that this is right. So with that said, I'm going to reiterate, Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you so much to our master plan ambassadors. We had well over 150 volunteers who said, I'm willing to volunteer my time and my professional expertise to reach out to people, to host events, to share our messaging, whether it be on social media or personal networks. We just want to make sure this reflected our community vision. Our department heads, our staff, everyone involved with the South Orange Village team, you have all been so instrumental in supporting this initiative. And currently, I'm a little biased, but I'm very proud of where we are. And I can't start and stop any type of Zoom or WebEx without just reminding people is that we are still in the middle of a global health pandemic. And South Orange, you have done a tremendous job supporting each other in any and every way that you can. As of today, which is January 12th, is that December was our worst month. January is scheduled to be our next worst month. We have had 50 plus positive test cases since January 1st, 2021. And while we are all very, very excited to see this light at the end of the tunnel, especially with Moderna and Pfizer and the vaccination plan through Essex County, is that we are still losing people in Essex County right now. We have the highest hospitalization rate. So anything and everything that you can do to be an ambassador, not just for the master plan, but for keeping yourself and others safe, the mask wearing, the social distancing, the avoiding large gatherings, quarantining, making sure that if you're feeling any type of symptoms that you're not going out in the public domain, washing your hands. These are things that we've heard over the past, from March, right? March of 2020. Please continue doing that because this is going to be a very long and grueling effort to make sure that each of us are safe. So I appreciate you for tuning in. We will absolutely be in a different place in a few months, but for the time being, do your best to be ambassadors for public health and for protecting each other. And for each and every one of you, I thank you so much for that. And with that said, I am going to turn it over to Phil Abramson from Topology to kick us off. And again, thank you so much. So appreciative. I'm so excited that we're having this event tonight. So Phil, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Sheena, and thank you everybody again for being here. For those of you, and I also want to thank you, Sheena, for the leadership you show not only to the village, but also to our profession. For those of you who don't know, Sheena is the executive director of my professional association, the New Jersey Planning Association. And when you work for a regular mayor, you're oftentimes having these conversations like explaining what planning is, why planning is important. When you work for Sheena Column, it's how do we make the best master plan that's ever been in 40 years, and how do we engage more people and set new precedents? And it's been a lot of pressure, but I hopefully we've risen to the occasion. I think we have, and to kind of address the elephant in the room, we a lot of the reason that this presentation didn't happen sooner, frankly, is that we hope we didn't have to make it in this forum. And I remember there was a day about a year ago when they said, all right, everybody's going to stay home from work for about 3 weeks. We're going to flatten this curve and we're going to go right back to the office and it's going to be fine. And I think that we were waiting for that curve to flatten so we could do this in person because there was so much robust in-person engagement to start with, as Sheena mentioned. And we wanted to sort of go out the same door that we walked into the community with. And to let this finalize, but as Sheena mentioned, and as I agreed, we can't wait forever. It's hard to talk about the future when the present is kind of so troubling and so difficult. I've found it difficult as a planner to find that voice to talk about things like bike lanes and stuff like that when some of the things, hospitalizations and things like that are a reality. So I don't want to underplay that in any way, shape, or form. But the other reality is that the best communities right now are thinking ahead and thinking about the future and using this time wisely to lay down a plan for moving forward. So I commend Sheena, I commend the trustees, I commend the planning board for allowing this to proceed in this way. And I hope to provide you a somewhat entertaining, definitely informative presentation. And here it goes without further ado. So what we're going to do, I'm going to talk about just kind of give you a basic overview of the master plan, the process that we've been through, and the process that we're going to be headed through. And then we're going to be talking about, a little bit of bias, my favorite element, land use and community forum, which deals with buildings and architecture, and how things, how new development should look. And then we'll talk about the timelines and the next steps, and sort of what to expect. We very deliberately broke this down into sort of bite-sized chunks, and we did this 3 nights in a row. We're calling it Master Planapalooza, and it's going to be it's kind of an ongoing festival for the next few nights. And I expect this to take about 40 minutes, 30 to 40 minutes for this presentation, and there'll be an opportunity to submit comments after. So the master plan document is now available at somasterplan.com, and we're going to go through that website together in a moment. I know sometimes when people direct me to websites, it's like, I got to go to something new and figure out where this link is and figure everything's located. So we put the website right into the presentation. We could walk you guys through it briefly and show you sort of where everything is located. The remaining engagement amongst these presentations tomorrow night, all at 7 p.m. tomorrow night and Thursday night. Tomorrow night will be mobility, which is traffic, bicycles, walking, all the sort of streets and public right of way will be there, and we'll have our guest and the planner that drew that plan, Dave Lusberg from Arterial, will be joining me tomorrow night for that, and then the historic preservation and quality of life element. Will from Topology will be presenting that. He was really instrumental in working with the Environmental Commission and in working with the Historic Preservation Commission to gather their input and come up with a plan that I really think is exciting and speaks to some of the things that make South Orange so special. The earliest public hearing that we would have on this matter we're targeting, and none of this is set in stone because it really does depend on what kinds of feedback we get, how fundamental it is, and we're going to take all of it to heart. That is one thing I can guarantee. So the earliest that we think that we'd be ready with a final document is March 1st, 2021. Another thing I should mention, I have gotten some comments on the appearance, the formatting of the document. The document was really put out there as a mock-up or a prototype. It is being professionally formatted right now with a local firm in South Orange, Four Elbows, who has done our website and all that. So definitely a big shout out to Four Elbows. Their work is amazing. They're a pleasure to work with. And they're going to be putting together a beautiful document that will make us all proud. So don't think that whatever justifications or typos or font sizes or whatever, we're going to have a great firm working with us to finalize this. So again, tonight's session is like really a public information session only. And we just, because there's so many mediums where people are going to be tuning in this evening, some might have the ability to kind of communicate back and forth, some may not. We thought that the most even-handed way and efficient way, frankly, to get everybody's comments and get them cataloged and make it so we have it trackable is through the survey and through the email. So there is a questionnaire on somasterplan.com. And then you should also feel free to submit an email to masterplan@southorange.org. And in that email, you can write it however you'd like, freestyle, for those of you who don't want to use the survey or who want to do something in addition to the survey. What we ask, just to make our lives easy, put your name and address in there. If you don't live in South Orange and you work here, own a business, that's fine. And also, if you're reading through the plan, you keep notes. But just to kind of bullet those different thoughts, we get a lot of, like stream of consciousness paragraphs that we have to then pull out the little morsels of comments. So whatever you could do to kind of do it that way, great. But feel free to do this how best suits you, and we will do whatever we can to make sure that we hear you. So this is the website here. I just wanted to show everybody. Let's see if this loads. Continue. Trying a new piece of technology that we did test. I don't know. Okay. So maybe at the end, I will bring up a separate window. There goes me for trying to do something with the new piece. So apparently my computer's blocking the security. We did test it, just not on this computer. But we will go through the website by the end, I promise. So this is so I'm going to give a master plan overview. So what is a master plan? We talk about this. We use this word a lot. But like, what is it? What does it mean? Why are we doing this? So zoning and planning in New Jersey, municipalities get that power to do that, to regulate land. They get that from the state of New Jersey. And the state passed a statute called the Municipal Land Use Law, and that's what creates zoning boards, planning boards, zoning ordinances, planning, all that. And the master plan is part of that statute, and it really is required to move ahead with certain things in a community, like passing a zoning ordinance. So essentially, this is the 10-year blueprint for South Orange. It articulates general policy goals. And I think that our plan, I know that our plan goes well beyond sort of those minimum legal requirements, and provide some specific design proposals. We talk about innovative ways of dealing with mobility and transportation, open space, equity, economy, and all the sort of measures of sustainability. So, but that's really what this is. And in the future, as zoning ordinances are adopted, redevelopment plans are adopted, they need to follow the recommendations in this master plan. They're there to implement this master plan. So that's why this document becomes so important, is that it really does set the tone and set the agenda if it's done well for the next 10 years. I'm sorry. Okay. All right. So what has been sort of our timeline here? Again, this has been going on for quite some time, and we did have a pause button on it for 6-9 months, whatever that was. But we had our kickoff back in 2018, late 2018, September. There was an interactive survey up and live. We had a number of responses from there. I'm going to go through some of that. Between in that fall winter time frame, we've had advisory and neighborhood group meetings, really late 2018, early 2019. We had village-wide meetings in April of last year. We had a land use workshop in June of last year. And then we had like the culmination where a lot of this was shared. Many of you, I'm sure, were there on week of October 21st of last year. So just about a year ago now. And then we've been meeting with stakeholders and reviewing with the steering committee over the course of the spring, and really just doing a lot of writing and working since then. So this is sort of that thing that I couldn't release, and we just kept tinkering with it. So I think the village is better off for that. And this has been, a pretty well polished plan. Just waiting for my slide to advance. So when we talked about unprecedented, I guarantee you've never seen a chart like this before for a master plan. So what this was, and I have to give credit to the village president, this idea, and like some people might call this like affiliative engagement, where it was like the Ponzi scheme or the pyramid scheme of engagement, where There was a management committee who then worked with ambassadors. There was a steering committee, and then a number of chairs, and then below that were neighborhood liaisons and ambassadors who would then go and talk to their neighbors. So you don't see this in other communities, and it's not just a leadership thing. Even though it was a great leadership vision on the part of Sheena, and we really had a great time working with the ambassadors and providing a training program for them. And I think there was value created, well beyond this process in terms of relationships. But this is a testament to South Orange that this community was able to pull this off, and you did, and I think it worked out really well. We got a lot of great feedback from this process. So there have been so far 46 different engagement events. We've had to the visitors at the time. This data is a little bit old, but 1,670 website visitors. If we had put it on like Sheena's Facebook for one day, we probably would have had 150,000. But this is the organic growth. 15,500 page views, and really, I will say countless public comments. Pages and pages and pages of public comments that we've gone through. So kudos to you guys for everybody that's participating in this, that did participate in this, for really putting the effort in and being engaged. It is a hallmark of your community. So the plan contents. So the plan is organized, and I'm gonna talk a little, speak a little bit to this, but it's really organized around these this mission statement, right? The master plan is a bold and practical strategy to enhance the existing character of commercial and residential neighborhoods. It's guided by broad community consensus, and the plan's overarching goals include the provision of dignified housing for all residents, to create beautiful, functional places and spaces, protect the natural environment, develop more amenities for residents to enjoy, preserve historic buildings and sites, and strengthen the village's unique progressive culture. So these are the things that sort of was like the boiling pot, that all the different elements and concepts and policies, the lenses that we looked through. So every master plan in New Jersey, and this is part of that statute I talked about, are organized into elements. The elements in this case that we elected to do is a land use and community forum element, which I'm going to talk to you about tonight. Mobility element, which will be tomorrow night, and then the historic preservation and quality of life element. And quality of life really revolves around open space, community health, things of that nature, that might typically not be in master plans, but felt like they would be important in this community, and we heard that from a number of participants. So in each element, how do you do planning, right? So this is our method where we kind of look at what the existing conditions are. We look at what's on the ground, look at those in comparison, and then from there we have these high level goals, and then those goals are broken down as you will see into different objectives and then strategies. So the first part of every element is like the existing condition book report on this is what's happened with land use in South Orange in the last 10, 20, 30 years. And then we move on to the goals, objectives, and strategies from there. And our goal here is to create actionable, implementable ideas and steps to be taken. Sheena said when we were opening that a plan is sort of only as good as its engagement. I'll take an additional view that a plan is only as good as its implementation, and that we needed to write a plan that could be useful. Like, we do not want to create what some people call shelf art, where like it's a nice looking thing that sits on a shelf. Our goal is to have our plan. It warms my heart when I'm sitting in a planning board and a resident brings it and it's dog-eared and they're reading from the plan to say, this is what my community wanted. This is what I expect from this project, or whatever the case may be. We wanted to create a plan that was useful for you as a community, and that will continue to be. So land use and community forum. This outlines the recommendations to increase the vibrancy of commercial areas, preserve neighborhoods, and resolve a lot of shortcomings, frankly, that exist within the current zoning ordinance. So again, this is the way that these elements are organized. And what was, my goal here is not to go through every page of the plan in detail. My goal is to kind of train you sort of what to expect in there. So when you open it, it's familiar. So to provide some level of familiarization. In these findings, um, the findings part of the land use, we looked at kind of the anatomy of the village. How does, where's the Rahway River? Where's South Mountain? Where's the corridors and mobility assets? How do all these things come together, and the development patterns that have come together to date? What do they now ask us for as planners, as leaders, as a community, to strengthen those things that exist currently on the ground? And as part of this, we looked at every plan that has ever been adopted here, every zoning amendment that has ever been done, and trying to put them in their context, and to figure out sort of what comes next. And then here, like this gap between what's the existing and what are the goals? Like, how do we come to what the goals are? We came up with a bunch of insights, and like one of them was that the development regulations here in South Orange do not and cannot ensure the type and the quality of development that's expected by the people. We've dodged a lot of bullets, frankly, given the zoning ordinance that we have. And a lot of it has been just bobbing and weaving with the situation as it exists and as applications come in, trying to work collaboratively with applicants on things. So that is definitely something that we recognized, particularly given the expectations that exist amongst the community, that there are no architectural standards essentially in the zoning ordinance, and we have a design review board that does an amazing job, but doesn't have always the ammunition to kind of be anything more than encouraging. There are truly inadequate amenities to support the pedestrians and encourage the use of mass transit. It's a big part of the culture in the village, the train, or at least it was and it will be. And that there needs to be more done to reinforce that and to make it more comfortable and to make it more convenient for residents. These are the things that we heard. Commercial deliveries, particularly on certain corridors like Valley Street, impede roadway operations. This is an old community. It was really developed and planned before before there's automobiles. So some of these streets are very narrow, and provisions weren't made for Amazon Prime and for UPS trucks to be everywhere and Uber Eats and all that stuff. So a lot of the time, those sort of operations happen in the traveled right of way, which then create congestion behind it. The zoning and permitting process, is getting much better, better by the month, but has impeded new investment. We heard from various owners who are intimidated, who are concerned about, whether it will be efficient, whether the rules are clear. So we think that there was work to do there. Detrimental land uses detract from key parts of the village, like non-residential land uses in residential neighborhoods that residents have mentioned have a negative impact on their quality of life. Both neglect and redevelopment pressures threaten some historic properties, which we'll talk about in greater detail. Seton Hall University really does remain an island unto itself. It is disconnected from the commercial heart of the village. There are town and gown communities where this partnership is alive and well, and it should be here. And I think everybody can do better, and South Orange would be better off for it if there was a better partnership with the university as an economic driver at the very least. Existing housing fails to accommodate existing housing fails to accommodate residents of all incomes and all abilities. And this is something that Village President has been extremely passionate about in terms of creating the right facilities and the right opportunities and the right programs, frankly, for all the residents and aspiring residents of South Orange to have a place in the community if they want to be there. So these things all kind of got organized, and we kind of so how do we deal with these things, and how do we begin to create solutions to these insights? So it comes to a series of goals: elevating the quality of new development, harmonizing land use and mobility, finding ways to accelerate reinvestment, strengthening neighborhoods and corridors, nurture the village's cherished sense of community, and ensure plan implementation and improve operations. That's kind of the administrative part of the plan. So the rest of the land use element is organized around these things. So we're just going to jump right into those, and I'm going to go through them with you. So elevating the quality of new development. One of the big moves here is finding a better way to zone, particularly the mixed use and more compact parts of the village, the heart of the village. That there are better ways to do it out there. South Orange's zoning ordinance is even just like the way that it's organized, the framework of it, its approach is antiquated, and other places in other parts of the country and other parts of the state have found better ways of doing it, and we can do a better job here. So, and district level design standards that integrate all these things, like we've done in the redevelopment areas, where we kind of really take a deep dive into these parts of the community that are complicated, that really aren't just about zoning. It's about architecture. It's about mobility. It's about other things. Would be a good thing to do. High quality architecture that's appropriate, and we'll show you what we mean by that. And then amend the zoning code to implement the things that are included in this land use and community forum plan. So one thing, I'm going to go through kind of how we went about assessing the village, how we went about making recommendations. So one thing here is like there's this bigger idea, and it's like a kind of an academic idea. So if you want to nerd out on some planning stuff, there's this idea of community form, or some call it urban form in other types of communities. This is at the heart of the land use and community form element. It's the basis for this goal. We pulled out a few things for time purposes, but there are, and this, so this is a summary. A deeper dive is available on the website, somasterplan.com. There's a presentation dated October 24th, which has much deeper information that would be, as hard as it might be to believe how detailed I'm being here, it's even more detailed than this. So what do we start with? We start with the place, right? We start with the community as it is. And so this is South Orange. And as you can see here, to just get you oriented, these are the train tracks that run essentially, I mean, I guess east-west, but here they're kind of north-south. But the train runs through the heart of the village. And then the river runs, I think, like this. It's hard for me to see right here. But you have the river and the rail. You have South Orange Avenue, which goes east-west. And you know, the heart of the village, and then these sort of established residential neighborhoods that surround it. Seton Hall University, Irvington Avenue as a secondary commercial corridor, Valley Street as a secondary commercial corridor. So what did we start to look at, and how did we start to identify planning priorities? So everything in red is sort of those commercial, the limits of those commercial corridors. Again, the river, everything in green. And it really is this pretty remarkable. And you know, before I really sat down and looked at the map of South Orange and really assessed the form and the organization of the community, like it's this beautiful greenway along the river, and it doesn't always feel connected. It sometimes feels like a series of separate open spaces or separate parks. But it's pretty cool the way that it is that you know the river runs perpendicular to your main avenue. The train tracks are and the train station is right here. Everything kind of coalesces right in the center there. And it doesn't always feel that way, right? It doesn't always feel like that spot um, is the heartbeat. But on on evenings when the train lets out, it sure does. But you can see in these stars, these yellow stars, are kind of activity nodes. So you have the train station, which happens to be like the main heart. You have Founders Park, Irvington Avenue, Seton Hall, the upper part of South Orange Avenue, and then the train station, Mountain Station. So what did this mean in terms of how we think about the types of buildings and architecture should go here and how do we organize it? Like what you can see is a lot of yellow, right? That's single family homes. Those are the established neighborhoods. We're not touching those, with the exception of maybe in certain situations allowing for it says ADU option. That means accessory dwelling unit, which was something that came up a lot in the engagement sessions, and at the same time, there was a lot of conversation similar happening in Maplewood, where they were going through their own kind of ADU discussion at the same time. The AARP was active in advancing that discussion as a way for to provide housing for folks who want to age in place. So we do have that ADU option out there on the table as part of this planning process. But again, you see how much this is just a residential bedroom community. And then along the areas of red are the really the most intense. The village shop front, and then we sort of scatter out from there into the pink areas, into the orange areas that are multifamily or mixed shop front, where we wanted to provide and recommending to provide kind of more flexibility, because especially now, especially after everything that's happened, being more judicious about retail and where it should be required and how it should be situated is going to be a reality of our practice and in our communities. So there's some more flexibility in that village mixed shopfront area. But this is essentially the way the plan gets organized. And so once you have these as like form districts, we're then able to look at, okay, so how tall should the buildings be in these different form districts? How, and I'll show you more shortly. But here, there has been now somewhat of a growing um, precedent, I guess you could say, or a growing pattern of 4 and 5 story buildings along the avenues, along Valley Street. And in each of these, as we introduce this concept of building typologies, and this is sort of the layup for um, for a form-based zoning ordinance, that it's based around buildings and building types. So we could then go and define these things as almost the building blocks of how the community gets developed, and these end up becoming these defined units, and we could zone and craft zoning based on these things. So I'm going to go to the village shopfront as an example of this. And this is pages from the plan itself. And it kind of has a description of what this village shopfront area is. It provides some imagery, not from this community, from other communities, but your community could easily be one of these pictures, of sort of what types of buildings, what's the character of this area, how do we set, what standard are we trying to set? And then it includes like a table of characteristics that what types of buildings are we talking about? How should they be placed? How should they be oriented toward the street? What kind of height are we talking about? How does the height transition from one district to the other? Where should parking be located? All of these things, and some additional policies. So for each one of those form areas, you're seeing a series of recommendations like this that speak to all that. What I have here also is this is an example that we did a few years ago now for the town of Morristown. This is Morristown's zoning ordinance that was based on a similar type of master plan, using similar types of, and I don't have a copy of yours to compare it to, but you could see here that this is much more clear. It's much more oriented around design. It looks more at, frankly, like sticks and carrots, incentives and disincentives to do the right types of buildings. There's more flexibility if you follow the standards, if you advance the policies, and then if you don't, it becomes more difficult, and you're able to really construct much less on a piece of property. So this is just an example of what could be next, growing out of the master plan. So the second goal, harmonizing land use and mobility. This is a big trend in the industry and is incredibly important. So the objectives here are developing comprehensive parking and loading strategy to minimize the use of on and off street facilities. As the village president and those in the planning board are aware, we did a very long and arduous set of presentations last summer for the Valley Street redevelopment area. And what we saw there was just a lot of older properties that had no parking, no loading, no way to service themselves. And as a result, were languishing and had limited utility. So we learned from that. We incorporated a lot of those lessons learned into this master plan and really came up with a series of recommendations that pair with the mobility element that you're going to hear a lot more about tonight or tomorrow night, about how to make the buildings play better with the streets, to put it simply. Leveraging the land use process to improve the public realm and to improve walkability. What do we mean by that? It's not always clear if somebody has to rebuild the sidewalk or enhance their sidewalk or plant a street tree. Sometimes it becomes like a negotiation, with the planning board or something like that. So we wanted to put this into the master plan that there really should be clear standards that when somebody builds new buildings, they should be improving the public realm, sidewalks, and things like that as part of that. And to promote multimodal transportation through land use regulations. And what that means is like providing bike parking on inside of apartment buildings, which sounds simple, but it's not really done, and everybody kind of pushes back on it. But things of that nature where South Orange is still a pretty car dominated place, and it's pretty amazing how much, and it's not really you guys. And as you're going to learn tomorrow night, 70% of the vehicles during your highest traffic hours, I'm kind of like giving you a sneak preview till tomorrow night. 70% of the vehicles have nothing to do with South Orange. They're just passing through. They have no origin here. They had no destination here. They're not, just somebody going to grab a gallon of milk. It's people just passing through. So we wanted to provide opportunities for folks in South Orange to not have to use their cars, particularly in these new developments. Accelerating reinvestment. And again, you could read about this more if there's things that are particularly interesting to you. I'm just going to kind of pick up the pace a little bit. So this is about taking away the red tape. Like this is the red tape removal goal. Letting property owners, letting businesses update themselves, update their buildings, providing clear requirements, remove the barriers that we're seeing and that we've heard about from business owners to doing improvements to their facades, doing improvements to their properties. And also something that Trustee Zuckerman was dogged about, even during his time as the SOFCA director, was this business code task force, and really coming up with a really wide range, because we kept finding new tenants for vacant storefronts, and they would get turned away because they weren't permitted uses in an old code. So continue to do that effort, continue to try to find new uses and opportunities. So strengthen corridors, again, protecting residential neighborhoods, something we heard constantly during the engagement effort. Um, Introducing common sense character regulations, elevating the center into a regional destination, revitalizing Irvington Avenue, enhancing Valley Street, and harnessing redevelopment where it's most appropriate to leverage these sort of opportunities. Nurturing the village's cherished sense of community. So if that prior goal was the red tape goal, this is the goal. So provide opportunities for access, for engagement, provide a wider range of housing types, and we don't just mean affordable housing with a capital A. What I mean by that is accessible housing, diverse housing, housing that accommodates people of all ages, abilities, stages of their lives. And then also provide meaningful incentives, certainly remove barriers to sustainable, environmentally sustainable development. And I think that this is the last one. So what we wanted to recommend here is to make sure that we're leaving this plan with a process to move forward, to create, and the objectives are to create a methodical phased approach, a schedule, and a budget to implement some of the ideas here in this plan, to dig right in and streamline the development process so it increases transparency, it reduces time that staff and everybody has to spend on things that maybe aren't a priority anymore. And again, incentivize sustainable development practices. So what I really I'm excited to show, and everybody likes pictures, right? Are some of these just beyond the policy recommendations, a bunch of words on the screen. That's great. And but this and a lot of redevelopments, a lot of master plans, frankly, stop there. What we did here, and we worked with an urban designer, a good friend, a great planner out of Nashville, Tennessee, Common Ground Design. Gentleman's name is Keith Covington, and you probably remember him for those who participated in those sessions. That he drew design concepts for each of these areas. So these are not definitive plans, but there are opportunities that he saw that were identified in conversations as a way to guide future development at these key locations where it's ripe for transformation. So a number of them were identified, thankfully. And we're going to go through at least one, and then I'll show you in the plan document where the rest are located. So the Sloan Street lot, which is sort of right in the foreground of the train station, the public parking lot between First and Second Street. You could follow along the map. The former Wells Fargo Bank. So this is this one catalytic area. There are others that I'll show you. The New Jersey Transit property on the other side of the tracks, the corner of South Orange Avenue and Church Street, which is that letter E, and then Hub Realty, which is a project that is now proceeding on F. So one of my favorite things is when master plans are making recommendations and projects are sort of kicking off around the same time. So this is that downtown area in the plan, and I'm just going to show you some of the drawings here. So this is what it is, and to orient yourselves, we have Village Plaza here, Valley Street, Scotland Road, South Orange Avenue, Sloan Street. This is First and Second through here, and then SOPAC and the parking lots beyond that. So just trying to go to my next one here. All right, special effects from PowerPoint, thank you. And we have a new concept. So like, surface parking lots. I know that people in this community like them or might like them because they're kind of convenient and easy and you could like bop around, but the community does pay a pretty heavy price. And it is some of the most valuable land that you have right across from your train station. And not just valuable like from a developer perspective, but valuable in terms of a community perspective, in terms of a cultural perspective, that this is the heart of the community. This is one of the busiest places you have to build economy, to build community, and to use it as a place to keep cars is a pretty heavy price to pay for that, and particularly when there's other alternatives and other ways to accomplish that goal. So this is the one concept for the downtown area called the Village Green. And one thing I should mention is that these are aspirational. We are continuing to work on some ways to express that if these projects are to transpire, they may look different. The buildings may be bigger, they may be taller. As we know, and everybody in South Orange, as I've experienced it, has a pretty sober view of real estate development and what it means for the community and how it gets done, and that the numbers need to balance themselves if certain things are going to get off the ground. So these are definitely aspirational from that perspective. So I just want to make it clear on this um, presentation. We're going to make it clear in the plan that these are aspirational images, and that we haven't done kind of that background analysis and financial analysis to crunch the numbers to determine if these things are feasible. These things are merely here to provide a direction and an idea to start to see if we could accomplish something similar to this. So this is a axiometric view of, or a perspective view rendering of that idea, that village green where, so this is Sloan, would be Sloan Street, the firehouse, and a new green for along First Street, with some new development, and then like a service alley basically here. This kind of reminded me of Palmer Square a little bit in Princeton, where you have like the shops surrounding the perimeter road, and then the big open space. So I think this could be a very successful thing. And when I saw these renderings, it was like, sort of like Christmas or something, when it's like you get this gift and you get to see what the future might look like. So I really enjoyed working on this part of the plan. So this is another concept for that same area called the Station Plaza. So the other one's called the Village Green. So we kind of have snazzy branding for each of these different concepts. And this really speaks to like that more European busy plaza right outside of a regional train station, and really going and promoting the pedestrian and yeah, promoting the pedestrian, frankly, from kind of a secondary user of the street to the primary user of the street. So this is what this might look like. Um, in this area, where it could be a place where people, and one of my mayors said it best, where the people teach the cars how to drive and how fast they can drive, because it is not a place that you would buzz through. There would be no curbs. It would be a plaza and a pedestrian space that cars happen to drive through. So again, there's a number of these focus areas, and there's and there's a number of sites even within them. So there are 6 catalytic project sites in the downtown, 4 separate concept plans, and then 28 different interventions and projects. And you can see down from here, Valley Street, Irvington Avenue. Oh, so this is going to work. Oops. Let's see what happened. No. Um, so I'm going to go through this next steps in adoption, and then I'm going to pull up. Actually, I'm just going to do that right now if I can. I really thought that was going to work. Bear with me one more second. Okay. So I'm just going to the website and I'm gonna so you could see this this web browser here. Yes, hopefully. Yeah. Okay. So this is the master plan website. I just wanted to walk everybody through sort of what this is and how it's organized. So you have here the plan, which we're going to go through in a moment. You have like the reader's guide, you have the calendar of events, particularly this one that we're in right now, and then the different elements in there. Next steps, you have all the presentations that were given on this and the calendar of events. So what I wanted to show you is in here, starting on page, I'm sorry, 157. Are all of these different focus areas. All right, maybe this is not going to cooperate. All right, so I'm just going to cut my losses, make that your homework assignment, go to the website, slmasterplan.com, check out, go to page 157. There's a bunch of cool drawings in there for different parts of town and the ideas for what those might look like as development and redevelopment areas for the future. Eager to hear whatever thoughts you might have or anybody might have on those or any other part of this plan. And I'll just say that kind of our next steps here are, I'm going to stop sharing. So I'm sorry for those technical difficulties. Our next steps is to hear from you over the course of the next month, ideally. And by the end of the month, we're hoping to get comments. There's again a survey on the master plan website. There's an email address. If you have any questions, you can write Will, who's on the line here with me today, and again, all the email address and everything is on the website. So the takeaways are, if you can provide comments to us by the end of the month, that would be great. And we will work really the following month to work through those things and have a plan ready potentially for the planning board by March. So again, sorry for the technical difficulties, and I appreciate everybody's time and patience being here this evening. Sheena, I don't know if you have any final words.
While you're here, why don't you introduce your team and the people who've been working with us?
Yes, absolutely. I think that they could do as good of a job themselves. So Greer, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Greer Patras. I am the Director of Land Use at Topology. I have been with Phil and in Topology with Sheena and many of you for about 2 years. And it's very interesting. It's a very interesting time to get to know a community between COVID and all of the changes and the master plan process. But it's been really great because it's kind of caught me up to speed on 40 years of opinions. And I really do love South Orange. It's a place that I visited as a kid with my parents and always had some fond memories here. So it's a really wonderful time of my life to be actually actively engaged in the planning here. So I am in the village a couple days a week, and I appear at the planning and zoning board meetings, and I am always available to chat with anybody about this plan or other projects going on. Open door, come in and, well, I guess don't come in now, but feel free to give me a call or send me an email. And I think we can build beautiful things together. Will, I'll pass it over to you.
Well, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Will Kurzenberger. I'm a property planner with Topology and been there for about 3 years. Perhaps or hopefully many of you may recognize me or remember me from some of the earlier engagements that went into the creation of this plan. Much like Greer said, I continue to be very, very impressed with the level of civic engagement and dedication that South Orange residents have shown through this. I don't think I've witnessed anything like it in any other community. I think it's something that makes South Orange very special, and it's something I'm very grateful to be a part of. And so don't let up. Please feel free to blow up my inbox with the comments that you may have, questions that you may have. We would really like to hear from you. And thank you very much for tuning in.
Thank you, guys.
Phil, if you don't mind, can I just have a couple minutes to go a little rogue while we have these attendees with us?
Mm-hmm.
Rogue is always a tough thing, but let's go ahead and rip off a little bit of the Band-Aid. So the master plan, it's the high level goals of our community. And at least in my interactions with our residents, one of the things that we talk about is always the scale of the buildings, right? We were used to, for 40 years, a 3-story building, right? People have fond memories of what was on the first floor. It seemed like there was people living above that first floor. And then there was this kind of feeling of this quaint village, right? That people have an emotional attachment to, especially into our commercial corridors. And what you've seen, especially in the past few years and moving forward, is that we have so many active redevelopment plans, right? You are seeing something that used to be 3 stories look like 5, in some instances, maybe 6 or 7. You are seeing this, you're seeing the governing body move forward with these approvals. You're seeing the planning board support these approvals. So in this aspect of our master plan, we're no longer in 1978. We're now in 2021. And what we are solving for is, first and foremost, what you will see in this master plan is this notion of inclusivity and being a welcoming community, not zoning against low and moderate and very low income families, a zoning ordinance that will eventually happen from a master plan that doesn't try and preserve the past, but rather respect this past and move towards the future. And what we heard in these community meetings, which I loved from all of the ambassadors, is that when we asked people what you vision for South Orange, it was never 3 stories, 40 units per acre, and a certain lot coverage. It was about people and connectivity and social justice and racial justice and fixing some of the wrongs of the past. And I think it's really important at this point to just connect these things, because I'm seeing it on social media. I always read your emails. I try and respond back to them. Is that as we look towards the future, we will grow. We will absolutely grow with this governing body, with myself, is that this is not about kicking the can. It is not about creating unrealistic development opportunities that will keep people out of our community. It is about growing responsibly and creating access and opportunity for all different types of people who would love to be here. And even for myself, I look at where I live, and in a 1,200, sorry for oversharing, but like a 1,200 square foot condo and spending $13,000 in taxes. People, my parents in Florida are like, what's going on up there? We're losing the ability to be affordable for residents who have spent their entire lives here. And we talk about aging in place for older residents in South Orange to be able to stay here. And we talk about younger people and people from diverse backgrounds being able to move here. And that doesn't happen by accident. It happens by design. And right now, over 90% of our single family homeowners are absorbing the brunt of this tax burden, over $18,000 a year. We like being on lists like, shout outs and all that kind of stuff, but being in the top 20 highest tax communities in New Jersey is nothing to be proud of. And in the past couple months, we've been listed as in the top 10 hottest real estate markets in New Jersey, despite the COVID-19 pandemic. And for realtors and for many people, that's something to be celebrated. Yet for planners and certainly myself, it speaks to a lack in inventory, is that we are not meeting a supply, which is artificially driving up housing costs for all of our residents, those who are able to afford it and those who certainly can't afford it and are looking for options out. So we often hear talking points about Morristown or Montclair. When we build these mixed use developments, we don't build them, obviously, as a private developer. We've lowered parking ratios. We will know from the mobility element tomorrow night is that the overwhelming majority of cars that are coming through our town, they're not even our residents. There are people who are using us as a cut through. And how do we solve for that? Well, what you told us is that we lower our parking ratios. We try and invest in things instead of structured parking garages. We're investing in safer ways for people to live here and then be able to walk around. When we offer financial incentives, and a lot of people say these are tax breaks, these are developer giveaways, they're becoming millionaires at the expense of our taxpayers and our schools. It's nothing but a net positive. I promise you, I certainly wouldn't lie to you. At the end of the day, that is new revenue. And along with that new revenue that we put towards our capital improvements, like our Baird Community Center and our public library and our roads and our water infrastructure, is that they are very minimal in the addition of school-age children. We know from our vision plan and from coordination with our school district is that we're looking at one school-age child for every 38 market units built. Where we will see an influx in more students perhaps is as we aggressively pursue the fair share housing element that was adopted by both the Board of Trustees and the Planning Board, in that hoping that every new development that comes online, one affordable unit will be built out of 5 market rate units. So if you think about that, we are not just advising, we are telling people that for every 5 times you want to build something, one of them will be earmarked, deed restricted, and ready for very low and moderate income families. And by the way, you're going to subsidize that for the next 30 years. So I participated in a session, a couple of weeks ago, where, a lot of elected officials live in progressive communities like South Orange. And unfortunately, sometimes we don't live our lawn signs when it relates to our master plan and our zoning ordinance in terms of access and opportunity. So when we have a new development, what's allowed in our current zoning ordinance and our master plan is typically 4 stories. When we hear the community come out and argue about 5 stories or 6 stories being against what the character is of our community, what we hear on the policy standpoint and the implementation standpoint is that what you're eliminating is that affordable housing obligation that we are so desperately trying to not only meet but exceed as a community. So that's one thing that I want you to think about during these visioning sessions. Again, people didn't speak to the bulk standards, especially in the commercial corridors. They talked about wanting new restaurants. We hear things like anthropology. We hear things like, oh my God, there's so many Panera, right? And for those businesses, the market research and direct contact with these places that people want to see, it's that unless we can provide them with tons of surface parking or structured parking, they have counts, right? It's how much money are they going to make? They relocate to places like South Orange, not because we have the surface parking, because we certainly don't, but because we have the amount of foot traffic and we have the walkability where people can quickly patronize their businesses, especially as we're trying to expand our retail corridors and attract what we hear that so desperately you want, I certainly want in our planners want for all of our community residents. So translating your feedback into first the policy, the overarching goals of the master plan, which I personally believe was exceptionally done by Topology, but then translating that into a zoning ordinance that gets the outcomes that you really want to see in our community is going to be a little bit of something we're not familiar with. Because one thing that we have done is point to what we did in 1978, and for decades now, kept trying to rationalize why we don't change. Because in 1978, somebody who was brilliant said this is what is going to be the normal in South Orange. So we still have a lot of ground to cover, whether it's tax incentives or density bonuses, or the way that we're negotiating for community retail space, like co-retailing, co-artist space, all these other things that are unfathomable. And quite frankly, other elected officials reach out and they're like, what are you doing over there? There is a focus towards equity and inclusion. For a new retailer trying to come into South Orange, the market, right? The market will say that a space is $35 to $40 triple net lease. Whereas what we can negotiate for is that community givebacks that allow makers and artists to be able to create a cooperative and pay significantly less. Again, that speaks to the access side. And when we talk about affordable housing, we really, really, really desperately, oh my goodness, we speak to the equity side. And one of the things that our planners were charged with, and the shenanigans you see all throughout New Jersey, is that the question is whether we zone for the realistic development of affordable housing for folks. I'm sorry about the air quotes. It would be much more impactful if we were in person. Or if we actually construct it, right? There's ways where we can play games, where we can say Flood's Hill, wink, wink, is where somewhere in the future, we're going to build affordable housing for lower income folks who want to be a part of the South Orange community. Or we make it a part of our redevelopment process. We update our master plan, we upzone our commercial districts, we offer tax incentives, and we actually get those units built. So I'm going to apologize well in advance. If you watch board meetings, you know I do this frequently in these tangents. But I believe that we captured the spirit of our community and what I would call the progressive values of our community in equity, inclusiveness. What we're going to get to is mobility, and then also understanding the historic preservation aspect of our single family zones and allowing things like accessory dwelling units and things that allow people to augment income in order to remain in South Orange. Is that these things are all really, 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 really interconnected. So it is 250 pages. There's a lot of things going on there. And then the next step after this is going to be translating that into our zoning ordinance. So when you come forward and say, like, why do they need a variance, Sheena? It seems like everybody needs variances. Nobody follows the rules. It's because these rules were created before I was born, and we've justified them well over 40 years for a town under the assumption that we're never going to change. What is will always be, despite state investments like Midtown Direct, access to train, and mass transit, and the desirability of our schools and our community in general, is that things have changed a whole lot. And I think that there's this great balance between respecting and honoring our past and always maintaining that aspect of what people want to preserve, but recognizing that at some point, we do need to move forward, and we have to do that as a community, and it has to be entrenched in the values of what we're seeing today. And that's my grand finale. I'm sorry, Phil, I just had to throw that in. Is that when we talk about these large scale items, how is that going to look when we adjust our zoning ordinance and make sure people understand what we're working towards and those best practices? And as a planning firm that represents, a lot of really great thriving communities that value things similar to us, is that you're helping us move that forward in a way that's transparent and that people can get excited about.
Thank you for making this so important for the community. It's great to do what we do for you.
All right, Phil. So you ready? We're going again tomorrow, starting at 7
Tomorrow
o'clock.
night.
The mobility element, just a sneak preview again, right? We may not have a parking problem. We may have a walking problem. All these new developments that are causing traffic. Stay tuned. Are developments causing traffic, or are investments in surrounding communities causing pass-through traffic rather than capitalizing an economic investment? Are people afraid to walk? Or is it more if we invest in lighting and walkability and bike lanes and scooters that people are going to be more likely to want to take advantage of these multimodal transportation? Oh, you are going to be so excited. So we're going to see you tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, WebEx, Facebook Live. And then on Thursday, we've got historic preservation, which is a timely topic in our open space. I can't imagine something more exciting other than perhaps the inauguration later this month. So guys all for tuning in tonight. Thank you, Topology, my colleagues on the Board of Trustees, and the 150 plus ambassadors who helped us in this journey. You guys have been truly incredible. And we're going to wait and pass the master plan once we get all of your feedback. So 250 pages of amazingness, and mark it up, submit your comments, and then when we're ready, we're going to introduce something that is going to be an exceptional moment in South Orange's history.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Okay.
Good night, everyone.
Have a good night.
Much.